Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to do my usual sound check, so if someone could throw in the question box if they hear me, I'd appreciate it. Hopefully my audio, there we go. Thank you, Jeanette, appreciate it. Okay, well, welcome everybody, and we want to thank you all for being here. We still have some people who are signing in. We've got again, a very large number of registrants for this webinar, and we welcome you to COVID-19 Human Resources and or Operations. My name is Mike Burke. I'm the Executive Director for PSBA. Christina DeLisi, our Member Services Coordinator, is also on the line and will be joined shortly by Grace Bradley Kelly, who is our presenter. And I think most of you know Grace, who is with RC Kelly. I wanted to welcome you all. As needed, we do these webinars with COVID-19 because we just have issues that continually arise as we're just kind of saying, navigating what we've all been used to hearing are unprecedented times. A little bit about today's webinar. Everyone is on mute. We do that because of the great number of people we have on, and it just keeps the background noise down. If you want to ask a question during the that you'd like to have answered, I ask that you use the question function that you'll find on your webinar dashboard. I think everyone's gotten used to that. So if you have a question you want to pose to Grace, go ahead and put that up there. Then you will also notice that there are 5 handouts available that you can download and access for the presentation. We will make sure that those handouts are included with the webinar presentation that will be emailed to everybody following this webinar, along with a link to the recording of the webinar. This webinar is being recorded as we try to do with most of our webinars. Before I turn this over to Grace, I wanted to give everyone a quick update. We all know that this is a really difficult, challenging time for everybody right now. There are a lot of questions swirling about our industry and how we're going to get paid, or if we're going to get paid during this time when many districts are remote or using reduced schedules and we have reduced ridership, et cetera. PSBA has been working at getting outreach to the Department of Ed. We've already talked to some legislators, but we are going to plan a virtual lobby day, and it looks like we're going to be doing this next week. And we'll be getting out talking points for everybody. What we'll be asking the members to do is, while we are, there'll be a group of us, the PSBA officers and our government relations representative, Kim Sokolowski, will be meeting with some key leaders in the legislature via Zoom or GoToMeeting or conference calls to talk about the issues that are challenging this industry and our need to identify ways to get our members paid, or get our industry paid, get contractors paid. We're going to be asking you on your local level to reach out to your legislators, the rank and file legislators, and we'll be giving you talking points and what our ask is going to be. And so we'll be look forward to that next week. We're doing that now because the State House of Representatives is coming back a little early to talk about some other issues, and while they're in town, we really need to get in front of them on these issues. This is a tall challenge, but we need to show them why we are a special industry, why they need to make sure we're here for them when we emerge out of this this period of time. So please keep your eye out for that call to action. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to call or email me. So with that being said, and again, we appreciate the support and the energy everyone puts behind making those calls for us. All right, so we're going to move on. We're starting to load up. We got a good number of people on now, and I am going to be introducing Grace Bradley Kelly from RC Kelly Law Associates. Many of you, if not all of you, know Grace. Grace has done extensive work and continues to do extensive work with school bus contractors. She's a regular at driver meetings, even if it's virtual these days. She is a great go-to for us on human resource issues. We were getting a lot of questions about a variety of different scenarios regarding dealing with HR during this period of time, and we are really fortunate to have Grace with us to be able to present. So without further hesitation, I am going to turn this over to Grace Kelly. Grace, thank you for being here. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and welcome everyone. We are going to try and make this as painless as possible, but that in this case is a little bit of an oxymoron because it's just a little bit crazy. So I've kind of bucketed the information as best I can. Mike and Christina are going to manage the question box. I'm going to suggest that we take questions as they come so that it's relevant to the topic we are talking about. However, if we get too far down the rabbit hole, and I am going to watch our time, we may need to cut off the questions and move on. And then if we have time at the very end, we can ask and answer more questions. So my buckets are symptom management, CDC recommendations, which is really where we talk about face coverings, off-duty activity, COVID-related time away from work. When this all started and the schools closed, we, for the most part, either continued to pay people under Act 13 or we sent them home on unemployment. So we really didn't deal with the Family First Act. So I'll kind of review that again because it's going to become more relevant with what we're doing today. And then, of course, if my insurance friends are on the line, we want to make sure that you are completing and communicating and documenting your good faith efforts because that's how you are going to defend any issues or concerns that come up. As with any and all HR events, our favorite word is document, which we'll start with in regards to symptom management. One of the handouts that you have is this sample employee self-declaration, or we call it an attestation, where it's an extension of your fitness for duty policy, that they are fit for duty with everything else that you normally would have them attest to. And now we're going to add on top of that COVID. If you've gone to the doctor, if you've gone anywhere in the last 3 months, these are the questions that everybody is asking. Have you traveled in the last 14 days? Are you caring for someone with COVID? Are you yourself sick? The things that we have added as this has progressed is, have you been a part of a large gathering? Because we know that tends to be a hotbed for additional infections. So we're adding that. This is a sample. This isn't mandated by anybody. This is a best practice. You can modify the questions as you see fit. This is our suggestions. So to help with the onslaught of paperwork, we also then created this bi-weekly grid at the bottom so that they wouldn't have to do this every day. They would complete it on the first day that they report to work. And then each time they report to work, they would just initial and date the appropriate block at the bottom. And the thought was that it would follow your payroll process. So they would hand it in every 2 weeks. This also helps if there's some concern or some contact tracing that needs to go on. You can produce these and say, yes, our people have been monitoring and here's our proof. The third bullet point on here talks about temperature taking. As you can notice, it doesn't say what is your temperature on here, nor do we recommend that you take people's temperature or have them record their temperature. There's a whole nother issue with just the biometrics of the human body, and what is a temperature for you may not be a temperature for somebody else. The use of equipment, who is doing the temperature taking, and all the pieces that go along with it. In addition to, if you do take somebody's temperature, you have to keep that piece of paper for 30 years according to OSHA. So our recommendation is we're not temperature taking, and we are just having the employees attest to whether or not they have a fever. The question that always comes up along with this, because it says, do you have any cold or flu-like symptoms? we are also going to be approaching, and we are already in, somewhat of an allergy season. So we have people with watery eyes and runny noses, but they are having an allergic reaction. They are not having a COVID sickness. And that's, again, why we are allowing them to self-declare, because they know their system, they know their body, and they know that, no, this happens every year to me in September, and I take my allergy medicine and I'm fine. So we don't want people to have, the sniffles or allergies wanting to then declare themselves as COVID. We'll talk a little bit about the ripple effect of a driver or a school bus professional having announced that they are COVID positive a little later. All of this being said, so this is how we're going to manage our employees. Our suggestions, and I think a lot of schools have already adopted this, is that a student at the bus stop will be deemed to have been screened and will be permitted to board the bus. We do not want our drivers or our aides being the COVID police and determining whether or not that child can board the bus. We don't want to leave any child at the bus stop. That child is just going to go ahead and board the bus. The school will worry about the documentation of the child. We are only going to worry about the documentation of our employees. Okay. Any questions, Mike or Christina, on that slide?
Not at this point.
Perfect.
Oh, wait. Oh, yeah. Yes, you will be receiving these handouts. I'm sorry, someone was just asking. So, everyone will be receiving these handouts.
Perfect. We want to make sure that you are documenting the training that you're doing for your staff. So I kind of jumped to the second bullet point, do and document training. We can't assume that just because we've all been through this for 3 months as individuals, that they are going to know what to do as an employee. So you want to make sure as you figure out how you're going to do your back to school meetings, that you're including a review of your health and safety plan, potentially a review of the school's health and safety plan, what your expectations are of the employees in regards to wearing their PPE, how they're going to disinfect the bus, when they're going to disinfect the bus, making sure that they understand that even though they may have a mask on, we're expecting them to social distance and all those things. The more you can't communicate too much in this time of confusion and uncertainty. There is a plethora of posters at the CDC and frankly all over the internet that you can use to help communicate the World Health Organization. I suggest that you put them around, you hand them out at back to school meetings, you make sure that everybody has gotten that information and you're going to document that as well. Here's everything I've done to make sure people understand that we are going to be safe and we're following the CDC recommendations. This also helps assuage any fear, because we have that subset of employees who can work but maybe are a little fearful about coming back to work and all the change that's going to happen and the potential risk. So the more we can communicate and share everything that you're doing, the better they may feel coming back to work. The last bullet here before we get into the students, I want to make sure that you're using the words following safety rules. For many of us, we don't have unions, so we don't, not a trigger word for us, but for those of you that do, failure to follow a safety rule and using that word helps with any union grievances, and it will also help if, goodness sake, you have to terminate somebody because they refuse to wear a mask or refuse to social distance, or any one of these other things. The termination would be the failure to follow a safety rule. Then again, we're responsible to enforce these rules for our staff. We are not responsible for the children. All we're going to do is we're going to report the children who are not following the rules. I've been likening it to your responsibility as a mandated reporter under Act 126. You're required to report the event, and the school then handles the rest of it, or the children and youth handle the rest of it. We're not going to be, trying to discipline a child who's not doing what's appropriate. I'm going to keep going, Mike, but feel free to interrupt me if there's a question.
Will do.
Lots of conversations about face coverings. We currently, and I think this just came down the tail end of last week, the Department of Education is saying everyone must wear a mask at all times. They give a caveat of unless you are eating, which we wouldn't be doing on the bus, unless you need a face break and you can maintain your 6 feet distance between you and another person, which frankly would be difficult on the bus because it's unless you're not going to use those first 2 rows, and certainly only if this is when the children aren't passing by the driver's seat. I would find it difficult for an aide who is supposed to be engaging with the children to take a face break while they are on the bus with the children for the 35, 40-minute ride.
Grace?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I have a question. What if the district asks a contractor to not let students on without a mask?
I would have a conversation with that school district, because how would then they leave that child at the bus stop? The parent has already left. Are they suggesting that you would leave a child at the bus stop? I would definitely circle back with your school district and come up with a different plan. So some people I heard are keeping a handful of the one-time use masks so that if a child forgets their mask, the child is given a one-time use mask. Please put it on, go sit in your assigned seat. So that's how some people are handling the child that arrives without a mask. We do not suggest leaving the child. But great question.
Yep.
So I'm still on bullet point number 1, and I jumped over unsafe conditions. So in all of the conversations, both at CDC, OSHA, DOE, they all say, unless wearing a mask would create an unsafe condition. And we also need to then jump into bullet number 2, those employees that may have a disability and are unable to wear a mask. So under these 2 scenarios, I would expect that you would do a case-by-case analysis and you would document well your potential accommodations for that employee. So an example of an unsafe condition would be an employee who has a face mask and wears glasses, and in wearing their face mask, their glasses are fogging up, creating an unsafe condition. Having been doing this now for 3 months, I find it a little hard to believe that the employee has not figured out which mask works best for them. And I will highlight here that I would not require an employee to wear a mask that you have created for them, but I would suggest that you allow an employee to wear the mask that they have found comfortable and able to use. And they figured this out because they've been grocery shopping for 3 months. We come in all shapes and sizes, and one mask does not fit all. So hopefully they have they've already found what works best for them. The other thing that we talk about face masks is making sure that when you have these conversations with the employees that you remind them that your face mask falls under your dress code. So we don't want to be wearing a face mask that has the Joker smile from Batman, which looks scary to little kids, or any inappropriate language on there. I've seen all those types of things. So that's the unsafe condition side. Some people are saying I would rather wear a shield than a mask. And for many months, we thought that was fine. The CDC most recently came out with recommendations that the shield does not provide the same amount of particulate shielding, or not shielding, but so the shield doesn't cover as much of the particulates in your speech as it's going out. So they're disinclined to recommend a shield. But frankly, I'd rather have a shield than nothing. If they can't wear a mask for some medical condition, I at least want them to wear a shield. The second bullet point, where it talks about other options for someone who is absolutely unable to wear a mask, some of these may, the telework may work for somebody in the office. Obviously, it's not going to work for a bus driver. An unpaid leave of absence, which we'll talk about a little bit later on when we talk about time away from work because of COVID. And obviously, taking fresh air breaks. Now, some people have also adopted if the wearing the mask is concerning while you are driving, they are wearing the mask as they're onboarding and offboarding the children, but while they are driving, they are not wearing the mask because they're able to maintain 6 feet of distance because they have not used the first row or two. And all of this has been communicated to the school, so nobody is seeing a driver drive down the street without a mask on and everybody's upset. Well, no, they're not wearing a mask while they're driving because we're maintaining 6 feet. If anytime he's closer than 6 feet to a child, he's putting his mask back on. Mm-hmm. It's all, I mean, if they can just wear the mask, that's great and wonderful, that's the best. But sometimes we need to make some accommodations. The 1, 2, 3, 4th bullet point, document, document, document. We're going to say probably on every slide. Okay, we've already talked about the students failing to wear a mask. Does anybody have any other questions about face coverings?
Yeah, great thing. Well, actually, I have one. Well, I think you answered that one. Up and down, over the nose, mouth as kids get on and off the bus seems reasonable. I think you covered that. And then specifically, where can we find the sample self-declaration that we have?
That's, I'm sorry, sample.
The self-declaration.
Oh, it's in the packet.
Yeah, you'll get that in your handouts.
Yep.
It's also already attached to the webinar. Okay, thanks, Grace.
Sure. So the next topic we want to review with drivers is one of our favorite topics is off-duty activity.
Hey, Grace.
Yes,
I'm sorry, before you move off, because I know you move on to a whole new topic. Someone here, we have a participant said, our district said that the Department of Health said we have to wear the mask at all times when students are on.
Right, so that's the best case scenario. If the driver can do that, that is perfect. If for some reason the driver can't do that, for a medical reason, you need to work through the good faith accommodation process. And that's where you might talk about, well, this person can't wear a mask for 45 minutes at a time because they have an extreme case of asthma and it's been exacerbated by allergies or whatever. Is it okay for this driver to wear the mask while the children are boarding and then take the mask off while they're driving? Or is it okay for this driver to wear a shield? Okay.
Yep, I think that's good. Thanks, Grace.
So, off-duty activity, my personal time, it's my own Facebook page, and all of those things that go along with that we talk about every year. So now we're going to add COVID to that conversation, and we're going to remind the drivers that, again, they're like the mayor of the town. Everybody knows who they are. Everybody cares about what they do because, again, I'm giving you my precious child. So we want to make sure that to remind them that if they are out in public, people may be they may care about what your school bus driver does. So we want them to wear a mask when they go to the grocery store. And actually, I think any commercial place is going to make them wear a mask anyway, but it's when maybe we're out in a large gathering. I know some communities have started to have their outdoor music at night, different things like that. You may be going to fireworks. You know, if you can't keep your 6 feet of distance, you're walking up to the hot dog stand, I would hope that your drivers are wearing their masks. Or even better yet, avoiding large gatherings. We've had a lot of people over the summer, because some of our clients have continued to work through COVID. They're traveling to these hot states. Have you talked to your drivers about what that would mean? Currently, the state of Pennsylvania might have 26 or 28 states on their travel advisory that says that person is to quarantine for 14 days when they return from visiting Hotlanta. And have you talked to your drivers about what that would mean and how, if at all possible, we would like you to postpone that trip to go see Aunt Susie until later. We understand some travel is oftentimes a once in a lifetime event. Somebody's getting married, or God forbid they have to attend a funeral. Well, you'd have that's a different conversation than, hey, I just want to go to the beach and I want to go to Dewey, Delaware. Well, you know, maybe that's not the best idea right now, because the advisory is that that person would then quarantine for 14 days. I liked this list from Texas Medical Association of other high-risk behaviors. So it kind of gave you lots of examples, which would be nice to kind of review with the drivers and the aides who may or may not know or are trying to decide what they want to do or what they can do. Please note, however, we can suggest and recommend, but what people do on their own time is still a personal choice, and God bless America, they still have that right to do what they want to do, but we just need to make sure that we then are communicating the consequences of their choices. So.
Questions? Good time for questions?
Yes, sir. Sure.
Okay. This one's more of a just a recommendation or a thought. Concern with the shield and driving, with the glare and peripheral vision. Someone, one of our members said they found an alternative at seemymouth.com. So they just wanted to throw that out there for the group if people are looking for options. Question is, safe operation of a vehicle, the justification of the driver not wearing a mask when actually moving in place, if placed on when student is entering and departing. So a safe operation of vehicle, justification of the driver not wearing a mask when actually moving, if placed on when students, oh, okay, so that's that same question, I think, Grace.
Yes, so I think that should be a conversation with the school district, that our plan to ensure that our driver is not distracted or having difficulties breathing or fog, you know, again, the class is fogging up, whatever, we would like to adopt the following plan. The driver wears the mask as the students enter. Once all the students are seated, before we put the bus in forward motion, we are going to lower our mask. So the driver is not concerned about fiddling with his mask while he's driving. I think if you could get that past the school district, that's a good option. My concern is that you won't be able to get it past the school district. So.
Okay, one more I have here. If you have a driver who is unable to wear a mask while driving, but is able to wear the mask when they're boarding and onboarding, the school district is insisting on receiving medical documentation, and the PA Health Department rule effective July 1st, 2020 states no documentation is required. Do we have to provide, and where does ADA apply?
So, and especially if you think about the students, if a student says, I can't wear a mask, I don't have to, we are not allowed to ask any documentation from that student. and again, that should follow through for the employees, but you may have to educate your school district on what is the appropriate response. So some drivers maybe say, sure, no problem. Here's my asthma diagnosis. Here's my last time I was at my doctor. Let's move on, which would be great and wonderful. Understanding that all of that is personal health information and it needs to be held to the HIPAA confidentiality standards. Some drivers are less inclined to share, and obviously you wouldn't want to share outside of what they have approved. So you could say, yes, I have documentation that the driver has asthma or whatever. The medical condition applies. You don't have to say what the medical condition is. I have confirmation of that. Thank you very much. But again, it's going to be an education for the school district, which frankly, I would imagine they're doing the same thing with their teachers. So you might want to ask what the process is for the teachers. And/or if a teacher can't wear a mask, they may say, well, we can't allow that teacher to engage because they're going to be inside with the kids 8 hours a day. Okay.
Thanks. That's it for this round. I'll let you know if any more come in.
Okay.
Thanks.
So moving on from off-duty activity, this is the meat and potatoes. Here we go. So I'm going to do the easy ones first. Unpaid time. If the employee decides, hey, I'm just a little too nervous about all this. I'm 76. My wife is 82. I just don't think this is the right time for me to be exposed back at work. They are, for all intents purposes, resigning or asking for personal leave because they aren't sick. They aren't caring for somebody who's sick. They aren't, staying home because the kids don't have daycare. Nothing falls under the Family First Act. So some people are saying, I understand, I accept your resignation. Other people are saying, hey, why don't I put you on personal leave for now until we see what happens? Because if in 6 months from now or 3 months from now we have a vaccine and you're comfortable coming back, I won't have to restart the process of onboarding you. Are you willing to stay in the drug testing pool? If I call you, will you come and take your drug test? And if the answers to those things are yes, you might potentially want to just put them on personal leave rather than accepting their resignation. Kind of a decision point there. The other group of people may say, I'm just not coming back. I just don't want to. I'm not coming back. I'm getting paid more on unemployment than to come back to work. Thank you very much. Which we all know is going to happen. In that case, that employee again is choosing not to return to work. And you would have to document, again, there's a form on PA unemployment, their refusal to return for suitable work, which means they are no longer eligible for unemployment. So make sure that they understand that. If they want to stay home, they may no longer be eligible for unemployment. And I say may no longer be eligible because heaven knows what unemployment assistance program they're going to pull out of their hat next. And frankly, you can't worry about all the what ifs of how much they might get over here, how much they might get over there in this employee evaluation. Now, when Mike calls you later, because he wants your help doing the virtual lobby day, and we're going to talk about all this unemployment assistance, that's when you can start voicing your disdain for whatever may be coming down the pike. So, but if the employee says, I'm just not coming back, I don't want to work for you, I'm afraid I might get COVID. Okay, I understand. Here's the refusal to return to suitable work. They might continue to try and collect unemployment. They may, but again, we can't fight that battle with unemployment at this time. You have enough other things going on. But you will have the right documentation and you will have submitted that documentation. Okay. Also, what I have up here on the screen, and actually in your handouts, is both the employee rights poster that should be hung up somewhere about Family First Act, which I'm going to go over, and a nice decision grid on what may or may not be available to the employee from Pennsylvania unemployment. So both of those things are in your packet. Okay, so I'm going to start from the bottom because that's easier. Unemployment compensation. Most of your staff, because it is summertime, are currently on unemployment. If your schools do not start because of COVID, they can continue on unemployment. At this time, there is no Act 13 that would allow you to bring them back and continue to pay them. So that option that we did back in March isn't there anymore. So if your schools don't open, they stay on unemployment, end of story. If your schools do open and your employees come back to work and they have a direct link to getting COVID, getting sick at work, they would go on workers' comp. This is going to be interesting and a gray area because they could have gotten COVID anywhere. Again, this is a microorganism that is everywhere. How do we know that it happened at work? So unless there is a distinct contact tracing that says, you know, young Billy had COVID and the driver can say my only contact with any positives was young Billy, I think it was work related. Okay, well, let's get up a workers' comp claim going. And again, it's the workers' comp insurance carrier's duty to accept or deny whether or not it was work related. So if you have a reasonable belief that it was work related, you're connecting the dots, I would go ahead and make the claim to workers' comp. If no students on their bus have tested positive, no other employees have tested positive, but your employee now tests positive, well, probably not work related, maybe from church, maybe from the pickup football game they played over the weekend, who knows. But they are now sick and are not able to work. This is where we get into this very dense Family First Act, which I'm going to pull up one of the handouts that you have. And you may recognize. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. When you feel a moment to break, I've got about 4 questions for you.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure. So first question is, would you recommend getting your drivers to sign a paper stating they don't want to continue driving, just so you have it in writing?
Yes.
Okay. For unemployment compensation, can we remove them from UC the day that the employee tells us they're not returning or the first day of school work available?
Can you remove them from your workers' comp?
From unemployment compensation. We're back on unemployment compensation. The day the employee tells us they are not returning to work or the first day of school, if there is work available.
Well, if the employee's telling you today, on August 18th, 20th, whatever it is, I'm not coming back to work, they resigned as of today.
Okay. In Pennsylvania, don't drivers have to prove it was work related rather than the default being work related?
No.
In regards to unemployment compensation, what should we expect to see? When should we expect to see our automatic relief of charges and documentation? And our rates will not increase.
That is a great question. I've been asking that myself, and I think that should be part of lobby day questioning of our elected officials. Because I'm still getting my reports that have show names on them, so I apologize. I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, no, it's a good one for us to pose, though.
Yes.
If we're having problems getting answers to that question, we should definitely put it on the list. So, all right, that's all I've got, Grace. Thanks.
Agreed. No worries. Okay, so we're back to this document. If I can drag it back over. The first half of this document we had webinars about. This is the CARES Act, and this is how you got paid through the end of the 1920 school year. The second page, it looks scary, is the Family First Act. So my suggestion is that you review this, but until you have a specific fact set, you can't make a decision. So you have to take each employee as they come with their fact set. So if you start on the left-hand side, let me see if I can make this grid a little bit bigger. On the decision tree, the first question is, do you have work for the employee to do? If the answer is no, they're going to go on unemployment. If the answer is, I've got some work, but not all their work, they're going to work for the time that you have, and they're going to go on partial unemployment for the other time. Okay? Now, here's all the yeses that go with every variation of why they can't work under COVID. And again, in March, y'all didn't care because nobody was working anyway. Now we're going to care because we're coming back, and potentially your employee may get sick. And I think that's going to happen. So we want to be prepared, and we want to at least have a working knowledge of how this works. Number 3 is the employee is just concerned and doesn't want to work anymore. I'm sorry, number 3 was the employee can work from home. So, and that's not your case either right now. Number 4 is the employee doesn't want to work, which we've already talked through. That's the unpaid portion. Number 5, the employee is not sick, but they are caring for a student because school has closed. So schools are reopening, so this is no longer going to apply unless your school is opening only virtually or your school is not opening. So if your school is physically opened, this does not apply. If your school has gone virtual and you have a driver that now needs to stay home with their child, and they say, I can't come back to work because I have to stay home with my child who is only going to virtual school, they may potentially be eligible for payment under the CARES Act. And their payment is the first, again, remember when they did this, they didn't know that schools were going to be closed for the rest of the year. The first 10 days, they can get paid. And then the next 10 weeks, they can get paid. While Act 13 only lasted through the end of that school year, this portion goes until December 31st. So this is still in play. So again, schools aren't physically opened. This may come into play. So the next scenario is the employee is not sick, but they're caring for someone in the household who is sick. Their child, their spouse, They may live in a multi-generational house, or they don't live in a multi-generational house, but their mother got sick. They live next door. I'm going to go care for my mom, and she's got COVID. So they too would get 10 days of pay, 80 hours. Well, I take that back because you guys aren't 8-hour days. They would get up to 80 hours of pay, which may take them 3 weeks to absorb instead of 2 weeks to absorb. And working through that quarantining time. The last one is the employee themselves are sick or been required to quarantine. They too can have up to 80 hours worth of pay under Family First. So,
oh,
go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I've got 3, so I figured I'll throw them at you now before you move on to that. I think you already answered the first, which is if drivers' children can only participate in their schooling virtually and the driver needs to be home to supervise them, is this a qualifying event for them not to work and get paid under the Families First Act? I think you answered that.
Yes.
What if I refuse to pay drivers because they claim to have a fever and are in fear of having COVID?
So I would remind drivers that, like any other type of claim, if they are falsifying records, it could be a reason for termination. Same if they would falsify a workers' comp claim, they would falsify a FMLA claim. Remember, this act sits on top of FMLA. And the other thing really to remind drivers is if they are crying wolf, again, back to that ripple effect, we're going to be in deep trouble, because a driver who may test positive or who has symptoms, the contact tracing of that would be the students on the bus. And then those students left the bus and went and sat in school for 8 or 6 hours with their other 28 friends. So now we got all the kids on the bus, plus how many classrooms that those kids went to. So I think it would be important, again, what are the consequences of fibbing? This happened at the beginning of all this down in, maybe it was Georgia or one of the Carolinas, in one of the processing plants, meat processing plants. One of the guys thought, well, I'm going to get my 2 weeks of free vacation, and said, I think I'm sick. And they had to close down the plant. They had to throw away a lot of product. It cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, only to find out this guy was fibbing. So,
okay.
Next question.
Here we have. Are employees able to use more than one time? I understood they can only use one time after 80 hours are exhausted.
Correct. It's again, sits on top of FMLA. So once you exhaust your benefit, you have exhausted your benefit. So if you are going to care for somebody and get your 80 hours and then you yourself are sick, you don't have another 80 hours. So once and done, 80 hours.
Okay. Okay. If a driver's let me make sure. Okay, if a driver is caring for a sick family member, can they collect their 80 hours under the it says PAU, I think it's a PUA unemployment report?
No. So we're mixing and matching a little bit there. So if they, so under unemployment, we have regular employee unemployment, which is what you all know. They also created pandemic unemployment assistance, which is PUA. You'll see it abbreviated as PUA. That's for people who weren't employees. They were self-employed, maybe they were gig workers, or maybe they had no money left on regular unemployment, or were not eligible for regular unemployment because they had no work history. That's PUA. So that's completely separate from Family First. If they're sitting in this bucket, they're not sitting in this bucket. They're mutually exclusive.
if an employee tests negative and the doctor still wants them to quarantine because he doesn't feel the tests are accurate, can they get paid?
Yes. If you are under, it's being directed by a healthcare provider to quarantine. That's one of the little verbiages. So yes.
What about paid quarantines for voluntary travel to Disney World or Myrtle Beach?
I know. So we've been having this conversation because the employee knows if I go to this state, I'm going to have to come back and quarantine for 2 weeks. And they are actively making that decision to go anyway. So I would think that they shouldn't then get the extra free time off, but that's not the way the statute reads. So we have kind of pushed that up to qualify, but right now with the way that the advisories are written for, travel restrictions and the way that the Family First Act is written, that would qualify. And I know that sounds inane, but currently that's the way it stands.
What documentation can we ask a driver who says they're caring for a parent who has COVID? We don't have a qualified event if the driver is just concerned about the parent getting COVID. That's a question.
Correct. Yep. So like FMLA, we should have documentation when they leave to go out on Family First Act and when they return to come back from Family First. And I think actually the return form might have been in your, and I apologize, Mike, I don't know the name of your task force.
The opening.
Yeah.
School reopening task force.
Yeah. So you definitely want to handle this like you handle FMLA or like you handle any other fitness for duty return to work. I'm going out, I'm going to sign this paper that says I'm being truthful, my mother has COVID, and here's my mother's doctor in case you want to double check me. And I'm signing on the bottom, she started on this date, I expect to be back on that date. It's the same as FMLA. And at the bottom it says if I'm, found to be not truthful, I could, terminate, disciplinary action up to and including termination. And then when they return, we want them to sign another self-certification form saying, I haven't had a fever for so many days, I've been symptom-free, I'm ready to return to work.
If a driver is now only working partial due to a hybrid schedule, 4 out of 5 days, would they still qualify for partial unemployment?
Yes.
For working the 4 days?
Yes.
What happens if they move to another employer? Will it follow? I'm not sure what that, I think they're talking about the leave in general, probably.
I'm not sure, maybe that some person can clarify the question.
Yeah, if so if a driver claims to be sick, rather than pay them for time off, can you put them on unemployment compensation?
Well, unemployment compensation is intended for when you have no work for that employee.
Yeah.
So, no.
I understand why we keep saying 80 hours. That's 2 weeks of full-time work / pay. But we're really talking about 10 daily wages if we pay by the run, by the day. Is that correct?
No, the way the statute is written is up to 80 hours. So it is, there is the potential that they could use it intermittently. And again, because it sits on top of FMLA, you have people who can use intermittent FMLA. So you could have people who use intermittent Family First leave. And frankly, for our office, we did exactly that. We had some staffers who there was no more daycare, no more school, and thank goodness they said, well, hey, Grace, I can still do X amount of hours. Is that okay? And I'd be like, yes, please. And then they use this Child Care Family First Act for the portion that they couldn't work.
Great. And I think, oh wait, I got one more here. It says for a part-time employee's 2-week equivalent. And I'm not sure if that's coming out of the, if they're actually following up on your statement. On the employee rights poster, it says, or a part-time employee's 2-week equivalent. That's
Oh, okay.
being pointed out here.
Excellent.
Okay, that's all the questions.
Okay.
We had a streamer right there.
Okay. Coming up to the 2 o'clock hour, these next couple of slides will go pretty quick if you'll bear with me. We had a lot of questions about waivers. You may have read in the, or you will read in the PSBA newsletter that was going out. Rich and his team did a great job on risk of liability for COVID. So read that. Currently, we do not recommend waivers for kids getting on the bus. If the school is going to have them sign a waiver to return to the physical plant, then make sure that the school includes and the school bus on their waiver if they're already doing it. But I wouldn't have a standalone waiver just for you and the school bus. Again, we've talked about this. This is a pandemic. This is a microscopic organism. How do we know that it was on the bus that they got this? You know, all those types of things. It's the contact tracing is going to be super tricky if they're even continue to do that. Again, as the huge wave came, they even stopped contact tracing because it was, they were unable to do it. So if the second wave comes, they're not going to be doing that anymore either. And then the other part is if you're trying to get every child, every family on the bus to sign a waiver and somebody refuses to sign the waiver, then what? You're not going to transport that child? Probably not. So right now, again, our recommendation is not to go through the process of issuing waivers. But moreover, what we are recommending is you follow your state and federal guidelines. You make sure that you are documenting everything that you are doing so that you can prove that you are in compliance. You want to over communicate. I would even at this point consider designating a COVID compliance officer, because again, this is going to get dense. And as all these different scenarios come up, you're going to want somebody who is fairly and consistently applying the policies and instead of having each supervisor decide on their own what may or may not qualify under the Family First Act. If you have more questions or you need more assistance, like we did at the beginning of all this, we have, and we've had it through the summer, the RC Kelly hotline. You can go to our website on the top right-hand side. You can make your appointment, shoot us an email, give us a call. Godspeed to you all.
I have a couple of more questions if I can throw at you real quick, Grace.
Sure.
Have our, actually I can answer one of these. Have our lawmakers been made aware of potential driver shortages we may face because of the unintended consequences of the Families First Act? And I can tell you that on the state level, our focus has been on the driver shortages that are currently being made, that are currently out there, and the potential of drivers leaving us when we are shut down and not getting paid. We have not talked about that. On the national level, I don't know if that's a federal level. I don't know if that's been raised or not. But we are raising the driver shortage issue and having a ready workforce in our local discussions when it comes to getting paid. So I can definitely, and I can forward that one up and get you an answer on that one. Are we required to sanitize school buses with a product listed on the EPA list if we have chosen a disinfectant that is safe to humans and kills the virus and ingredients are listed, that is safe to humans and kills the virus and ingredients are listed on the EPA as one to kill the virus? So I'm not quite sure where that one's going. I guess it's if you've chosen something that's not on the EPA list, can you use it?
Yeah,
I'm not sure about that. We can try to get back to you on that one. Are we allowed to mark the floor of school buses to keep children reminded of 6-foot social distancing? That I will tell you was a question I currently have into PennDOT. So I can get back to that person on that. I know that that's a pending question. I'm waiting to hear back from them on. And then this is just a question for me, I guess. I know lobby day is coming. What are our gut feelings on more mandates by the governor about pay for shortened hybrid schedules or fully virtual schedules? I guess if you're asking whether we have any inkling on whether or not we're going to see any sort of another Act 13 where we'll be paid either on a shortened schedule or a full remote, we are working on getting that message out now. That is going to be the message behind lobby day. Gut feeling is it's a big concern as to whether or not the legislature is in the mood to do another Act 13. However, some conversations we've had, they do realize, and this was relayed to me today, that we are special and that they need us. So we need to play on that, and that is exactly what we're going to be pushing and why it's going to be important for all of you when we do our virtual lobby day to make those calls, and we'll provide you with some of those talking points as to why you are special, why you need to be there for them. I guess to follow up on the disinfecting had to do with citrus acid that kills the virus, and the EPA approves much, but it's not approves it, but it's not on the EPA registered list. I don't know if you've heard anything about that at all, Grace.
I have not.
I have not either. I can try to get you some answers. Or are we recommending that we use the COVID questionnaire with our employees? We had not planned on requiring that. We were just asking drivers to self-assess and notify us of any concerns or symptoms. That's for you, Grace.
So yes, I would recommend that you get that in writing by using this, some version of this tool that we had provided, which is this guy. Get it in writing. Today I didn't have any symptoms.
And I will tell you, and I got a thanks, great job, Grace, and I'm sure a lot of people did. Okay, one more. Can you tell me again what happens if a driver says they're not comfortable returning to work?
Yep, so if they're just fearful of returning to work, they are either resigning or you're going to put them on personal leave, unless you can review with them everything that you are doing to keep them safe and protected, and then they feel better, and then they will return to work. But if you are just fearful of working, there's no extra assistance for that. They would just be resigning.
Is it okay to put the questionnaire on the pre-trip forms?
I mean, like, yeah, I guess on the back of the form.
Doctor's orders about time off pending test results, paid or not.
If the doctor has already, if someone, yeah, so if someone has gone for a test and they're waiting for the test to come back, that person should be in quarantine and you can't use them until it's, so think of it like your drug and alcohol test. So I've got a suspicion, I'm going to test you. You can't use them until that test has come back, which actually is a great point because I don't think I talked about that. An alternate to the full quarantine is if you can get tested and get the results of the test back that you're negative. So if you have a negative test result, you're negative. So you're good to go. Now, everybody's all concerned about whether the test results are valid, you know, all those types of things. The more risky situations like healthcare, they actually require 2 negative tests 48 hours apart. I think that's the same thing that the professional sports people are doing, 2 negatives 48 hours apart before they would allow them to come back and not have gone through the full quarantine time. So
Is that paid time? Would that be a paid time off?
that would fall under the Family First Act, yes.
Okay. Final question, if we have a driver who's over 65 and they have a doctor's note saying they should stay home, does this fall under ADA for accommodation?
Well, you can't stay home just to have an ADA accommodation, or unless it's a defined period of time, which with COVID, I don't believe there's going to be a defined period of time. To completely be off work for an ADA accommodation, there needs to be a definitive return to work date.
Okay. Grace, I want to thank you. We're a little over time, but we didn't lose anybody. It's funny, when we usually hit 2, it starts the job of everyone that's hanging on for every last dear word they could get. Once again, everybody, thank you. Did you want to have the slide in front of you right here for need more assistance? Take advantage of the Business Council Program hotline. You can do that by getting right on, I believe there's a link right on the website to do that on the RC Kelly website. It's a great service and we appreciate it. It's something that you get a benefit as a member of PSBA. Take advantage of it. Grace, thank you so much for a great webinar, for one that was much needed for our folks.
You're very welcome. Good luck, everyone.
Hey, everyone, stay safe, stay well, keep in touch, and of course, let us know if you need anything. Have a wonderful day.